Hey everybody, Doug here from 2+Tough. Welcome to the 2+Tomes book club, because today we're talking about Gloomspite by Andy Clark. I threw this one out there mainly because the last time I did voting, Gloomspite came up a lot when I was doing the book club a while back, and so I just kind of wanted to start getting through some of those ones that always like tie for like the next choice of book, but never like take the lead. So we did oh my gosh, I don't know why I keep calling it Ardent Keep. It wasn't that. The intro book, Dominion, my goodness, from Darius Hinks last time. And so I thought at the same time, let's just knock Gloomspite out and we'll cover more books in the future here. But so the way this is going to work is I'm going to do a quick, 2 to 3 minute long spoiler-free review, and then I will make it very clear when we're going to jump into spoiler territories. This is really meant for folks who have finished reading the book. Pretty soon after this goes out, I am going to do a lore video that basically summarizes it, if in case you don't care about spoilers. It's a good book, I'm gonna be honest with you. So let's dive into the spoiler-free review. The best way that I can explain this book is, if you don't understand what it's about by, the name or the cover, I can't help you. Like, there's just some things like, you're getting, here's the cover for reference, that you are in for some Gloomspite Gets action when this story begins, right? I feel like that's not much of an illusion. They're not trying to hide it or bury the lead. It wasn't like Dominion, where I expected a Stormcast story and I got a whole bunch of humans and cities of Sigmar, which was a cool surprise. This is exactly what it says on the tin in terms of the enemy, but I think it was an incredibly fun read. Let's see, Snake Rob, I didn't manage to finish it before now because I'm a plebe. I'm not gonna lie to you, I had a lot of struggle. I was traveling, seeing family and stuff, so it was down to the wire. It's what you might call a photo finish. The spoiler-free review is, this is a book that is not so much following the perspective of the Gloomspite Gets as a faction, because I think it'd be very hard to do that. This is instead following the events of a group of mercenaries who were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a town had to face the Gloomspite Gets. That's ultimately what the story is. And that's how the villains come together. Now, that's pretty much all I can do for spoiler-free as far as plot goes. Other things I'll add that aren't spoilers. I feel like it's very well written. There are a number of characters that all, I feel like, get their own little moment in the sun. And, it's sufficiently creepy. It's a super creepy book. Andy Clark is wonderful when it comes to descriptions of gore and the stuff that you expect when you see Gloomspite on the cover is mushrooms, fungal growths, weird mutations, that kind of stuff. So, I'm looking here at my notes. I don't really have anything else for the spoiler-free review other than to say it's a good book and I do recommend it. I don't like to compare it, different art authors and their works of art. I would say it's a very easy read for sure, in terms of there's nothing crazy like esoteric. If you're not super into Age of Sigmar, you can pick this up and completely understand. It's a very tame fantasy setting and it's cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause it there for the spoiler-free review. I'm gonna put, the here be spoilers, this is your last chance, avert thine ears. We're gonna get into some spoilers. So, what I'm gonna do is ask, if you are in the chat and you read this book, go ahead and just throw out either your favorite part, your favorite character. Just basically, I'm gonna have the chat be a list of things to come back to and chat about throughout the video. It's gonna be about an hour long, something like that. So for me, the way that the overall flow of the story goes, there's a mercenary band group made of all different kinds of people, whether it's engineers, warriors, there's a Duarden guard, an elf, Waywatcher, something like that. And they're a D&D party. Like, straight up. Like, I don't know if anybody else got this vibe, But when I'm reading this book, it reads to me, it's like you have that one person in your D&D group that actually records all the things that happened. And if you were to take that book and turn it into a novel, you would have Gloomspite. You have a mangly bunch of characters that don't have a home. I mean, they technically are murder hobos, but they're not really murdering, you know what I mean? They're good guys. So they have this, gaggle of heroes that all have different motivations, strengths, weaknesses, personalities. We'll talk about character development and stuff like that in a bit. And then one of their number dies, the former leader. We actually meet the warband after their previous leader has died. His brother now takes control. And the last words of the former leader were like, go warn this town that something's coming. And so that's the premise. They just were like, okay, well, it was his dying words. We should go warn the town. And because of that, they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. They're in the city of, is it Draconium? I believe it's just how I pronounce it, how I've been reading it. I'm sure I got that wrong. But anyway, and then just a whole bunch of weird stuff starts happening. Now I'm going to pause there in terms of the plot, because one of the things that I loved about Dominion that showed up in this book too, that I didn't know how much I appreciated, was the buildup of an evil that is hard to comprehend. Now, what I mean by that is, sorry, I'm gonna look at the chat here in just a hot second, with my list of things to cover. What I mean is, in Dominion, I chatted about how much I liked the Cruel Boys because, they were leading Stormcast astray. They put all the townspeople in the other town they attacked up in a big old net and kept them there. We didn't actually see a Cruel Boy until well into halfway through the book, if not a little bit further in. This does much of the same thing where, I think it was at the 49% marker. Somebody mentioned the banquet. Yeah, that's crazy. That's when the first big blow is struck against the city, when they ultimately kill the religious, or attack the religious leader with poisons and shit. Yeah, no, it's wild. I love that build up. I love the mystery, even though I know it's about Gloomspite Gets. I mean, again, see cover for details. I felt like it did a fantastic job of throwing away my assumptions about the army, because I have been under the assumption that the Bad Moon just arrives here, all the Gits that are in the area just bust out of the caves, but it's a much more of a slow burn. The Bad Moon, I'm assuming, picks a target, and then as it's moving there, the world starts to bend around it, and that was such a fun read. It honestly read to me sort of it's I talked about writing style wise, it's like a role-playing game group turned their experience into a novel. I still stand by that, but instead of being purely AOS-y, the Rumgate Wars, or which is crazy fantasy stuff, it felt honestly more like a Cthulhu type thing, where it's just a bunch of weird little things, and then our team, who are not detectives, are trying to piece together just what in the hell is happening. And even though we as the audience, we've seen the cover of the book, we know who it is, still the journey of how these little details and clues are left around that lead the characters to their conclusion of what is actually happening. I thought that was awesome. I didn't realize how much I liked not seeing the villain, but seeing the effects of them as much as I do. I don't know, because that's something you see a lot with 40k novels. I tend to find very dry for that exact reason, is there's a lot of, aha, I'm the bad guy, or there's a whole chapter or exposition scene where the bad guy is just ruminating on his plan just to let us know. Not all Black Library authors are quite that bad. Aaron Dembski does a fantastic job with more natural dialogue. So did Josh Reynolds. I think Andy Clark nailed it here in terms of I feel like every character was consistent with pointing out the clues that they would understand. The engineer would have caught something that the bodyguard wouldn't have. So, of course, that was the person who brought up the clue that the engineer would see. That kind of stuff. So I thought it was super cool. I'm trying to think of what else. The only thing is I felt like the ending, it didn't stick the landing. Like, it just didn't have the same impact. And I'm not even sure what I would have changed, to be honest with you. Like, when I reviewed Black Talon, I had a whole bunch of ideas on how I think they could have had an incredibly powerful and emotional ending. But I really don't for this one. I'm just like, I wish there was more ramifications, but I didn't feel, I don't know. But I mean, as far as like a journey to leading up to a big battle, and cool things happening, I thought it was really nice. I would love to see like a Warcry style game of City of Sigmar versus, I guess Gloomspite gets, just these little battles that like leave clues and I don't know, something like that. I think the build up to the big reveal about who is attacking, what's happening, why things are so weird, and the connection between all these small little incidents everywhere, I thought was utterly terrific. So I'm gonna look at the questions here and just see. My favorite scene is the banquet scene. Beastie, I agree. It's pretty much just where I got up to when the Bad Moon came out. It was awesome. Yeah, I mean, in terms of a book taking something that we see in a battle tome and really fleshing it out, this is a 10 out of 10. I mean, specifically that. Like, you can always have debates over like whether or not you like an artist's style of writing or that kind of thing. But for if our only metric was you took something that was maybe 6 paragraphs in a battle tome and you turned it into a novel and you fleshed it out with ramifications, this book, it just crushes, like straight up. Because yeah, I mean, because honestly, I went actually and grabbed my old Gloomspite Gets battle tome, and I was reading about it, and it's like, it has an entry on the Bad Moon, but it has more to do with the Bad Moon conceptually than like what it does when it arrives. We know that people go insane when there's fungal growths and all kinds of crazy stuff, but it's almost, I don't know, it's just seeing those things happen and how slowly they happen, that this was going on for like a week. Well, I mean, it was going on beforehand, right? Because when we meet the captain of the city, she already has weird crap happening, and then I think it was like 3 or 4 days with the Swords of Sigmar there. I think so. I know that when after they established working for the city guard, it was like 2-3 days of rain. That's when the zealots were kicked out and things got better ish. So I don't know. I thought, yeah. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm gonna turn it over to you guys, see what you have to say. Hello everyone. Played my first one-page rules AOS skirmish solo game today. Oh, awesome! Thank you, Hans. You jumped into a book club here, but do not worry about it, my friend. I'm so glad that you're gaming and having fun. That means the world to me, and I'm glad I heard it. Everything starts growing fungus, super creepy and gross. You really feel the presence of the moon, and that you have to get out. Oh, that you have to get out of its gaze. Yeah. That's another way to put it. One thing I've said repeatedly about Archaon, whenever he shows up in Black Library novels, is that whenever he's in a book, he commands the scene, right? Like, if Archaon's not in this scene, yeah, somebody else can be the epic hero and seem all powerful, but the moment Archaon enters a scene, he steals the show. Like, everything bends around him and what he's doing. And I felt the exact same way about the Bad Moon. Leading up to its arrival, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff, I mean, like, yeah, there's this guy who's blessed by Sigmar. We got, maybe some individual character moments for the captain, obviously for the crew, the mercenary band that we're following, all those kinds of things. But the moment that the Bad Moon shows up, like, it's like everything twists to adjust to it, which is cool, because that's that's fundamentally what happens to the characters in the story as well, right? It's not just like it's a presence that's above us. It's like, no, this is the main scene. Everything else is like the squabble that happens around it until it goes away, and then we can start reconstructing or something. I thought it was really cool. Fantastic. Let's see. Bisita had a pretty good stakes. I agree. I felt like the characters, in terms of like each character's personal stake, I think definitely the one that got the most, attention, I would say, was probably Hendrik, or I believe I'm pronouncing that right. I'm terrible at names when it comes to fantasy novels, guys. I'm so sorry if I forget a name or get it wrong. The warband leader, the party leader, if you will, so to speak. His personal quest of like, I need my brother's last words to mean something. That is a perfectly relatable motivation, and it is not crazy. It's not absurd. It doesn't matter how his brother died. He got like turned into like all kinds of pug, fug, ugly, chaos, spawn, nastiness. That is irrelevant. The fact that we want the deaths of the people we love and respect to mean something is. So like, yeah, I would absolutely sit outside of the rain of a place if I thought my brother needed me to deliver something there. I was like, this is the way that I can honor him. I like that. I liked that motivation, and I really liked, and I'm so sorry, I forget their names, the engineering gal who just only ever wants to work at her workbench. Basically, she's a Ironweld Arsenal engineer, and so she always wants to be working on crafts like that. When they describe her, and I'm being dead serious and I'm being mature, I am not making an insult, and it made me happy that she seems almost like she has a form of like a high functioning autism, which would be, for representation's sake, I think really, really cool. She's a contributing member. We get to see her act, not just scared when everybody else is scared, but even when things are like quote unquote fine. I feel like Andy Clark did a great job of like, she socializes differently, right? I mean, in terms of just who's around her, the fact that she's always counting her fingers, those kinds of tics and things like that. I was like, I can't say for sure if this was meant to be intentional representation. If it is, I love it. And if it's just one of those things that's meant to be ambiguous, I cool with it too. I really liked her as a character. Again, terrible at names. Mainly because there was like 6 or 7 people, right? They had, one of them was a necromancer, where you're just like, I like that guy. I want to hang out with this dude. He had a really surly sense of humor. There was that scene where they found the dead body and like the bugs are crawling out of it, and he's just like leaning in like, nice. And everybody else is like throwing up, and he's acting like it died in like the 69 pose or something like that. He's just like, I like this. I thought that was super rad. Let's see. Oh, by the way, Andy Clark confirmed on Twitter she is on the autism spectrum. That's fantastic. And not just for the sake of inclusion, but that she was a meaningful character. I feel like she was a meaningful character. I mean, to the extent that like a band of like 7 characters all have their moments, I felt like she was a very meaningful character. He wanted to represent a more neurodiverse cast. I have never heard of neurodiversity as a word specifically, but I'm here for it. Let's see. Gimmers! Hey, love your stuff, man. I'm new to Age of Sigmar, and you helped me get into the lore. Oh, buddy, thank you so much for watching. That means the world to me. Scragrot. I always keep saying Skag. People are like, it's not a ska band. Scragrot is awesome in this. He absolutely is. I liked the way that they had him be the villain, but it didn't... I mentioned before how like the Bad Moon really kind of stole the scene, and it kind of like shaded and colored all of the scenes after it, once it was introduced, right? Things changed once there. With Scragrot, the the thing is I liked about this is because he definitely seemed in charge, and he definitely seemed terrifying, like super terrifying. But I never felt like this was all because of him. You know what I mean? Like he didn't seem like the ultimate evil. The Bad Moon seemed like the ultimate evil, but he was the threat that's like present on ground trying to stab you in the face, even though what's going on above you is actually the problem. I don't know. I thought that was really well done. Like the balance of having Skragrott not be the all-encompassing threat, but that he's just one arm of what's going on in totality, I thought was really well executed. For me, the book changed. Gloomspite. Sorry, this is Hugh. Thank you so much, Hugh, for also mentioning the Andy Clark thing on Twitter. I really appreciate that. For me, the book changed Gloomspite from, haha, these guys are crazy and fun, into, these guys are supernaturally insane. It's really sinister with some seriously dark humor. Yes, I absolutely agree with that sentiment. I think part of what made it so dark for me was the slow build-up. Like, I loved, there's something about, like, an orcs and goblins army that's very, like, you know, the classic kind of fantasy battles where they're all kind of goofy and, like, they're the clown princes and that kind of stuff. They're just kind of dumpy and fun. I mean, they're meant to be entertaining. All of this stuff is, of course. But the difference is like, when you do these things over time and you just create an environment of fear within the city, that's what takes the laughing and the joking and the bouncing and that kind of stuff to another level, because you're starting to like haunt people, and I like that. I think the stretching of time to like a week and a half ish is what made them go, to me, and the horrific deaths, of course, go from just being funny to actually like being scary. I don't know. Sorry, I have terrible hiccups right now. 2+ stuff. Thought this one was fantastic. So horrific, sorry. So gruesome, much better than the old comic relief grots we used to get. Yes, and I, again, obviously that goes with the last point. And I totally agree with that. As much as I like the fun, here we go, kind of orcs and goblins and stuff, like, if they're going to be their own army, how they separated orcs and goblins from that into Gloomspite and Ironjaws initially, I felt like they needed a scary side. Like, almost that goblins weren't complete because the orcs, because they're so much bigger and muscly and that kind of stuff, represented a lot of the scariness, like, potential. But it has since changed to like, no, these guys are like really creepy. really, really creepy. Let's see. Okay, I read those by Andy Clark on Twitter. Thank you again, Wyatt. Oh, sorry, Hugh. Hugh Wyatt, that's why I got confused. One thing I liked is the obvious faction didn't come in and save the day. I really liked this was going to happen, and I was glad it didn't. Yeah, absolutely. I think on the whole, Black Library seems to be getting better about that. Rather than just having, because the first whole year of, maybe even 2 years of Age of Sigmar books and novels they were putting out, it was always Stormcast come in and save the day. But we're seeing more and more. First of all, they're just putting out a ton of short stories regarding like faction specific things. There's like a whole trilogy on the Daughters of Cain. You got some Caradhran Overlord things, Callus and Tull. Like, they're getting better at moving away from Stormcast. They might show up in a story, but usually they're like pants crappingly scary to whoever is not a Stormcast, which is awesome. And this book, I think, really highlighted the fact that, this and Dominion, honestly. I know this came out a while back, but to me, it really highlighted the fact that the Stormcasts are actually very few in number, and that as civilization is trying to spread and grow and tame the land, they simply will not be everywhere. And so, like, these are the realities that citizens have to face. And so, like, I thought for that reason, not having the Stormcast was a wonderful choice. Absolutely. Really hope to see Scragrot working with Gobsprak when we get the War Clans book next year. I'm just kidding. It just feels like an eternity since they've announced those books. Yes, absolutely. And I was thinking about that because now that I have the perspective of Broken Realms Kragnos, looking back on this book, which came out before it, obviously, I'm looking at that and I'm like, well, we get the sense in like the battle tome and even this book, Scragrot, he's not exactly a team player. He likes to be in charge. He likes to feel like he definitely, I mean, at least from his lore, likes to put on the air that he controls the bad moon, or at the very minimum can predict it, right? That he's connected to it somehow. But then when we saw Broken Realms Kragnos and he brought his basically asylum with him to the battle, and they were doing all the kinds of prophecies and that kind of thing, and Gordrak just straight up ignored all of it. I felt like, okay, it's weird that he's like willing to participate with them, but now having seen that he is sort of willing to participate, but that he's frustrated that like orcs aren't doing what he says, it also makes me very excited to see him. I'm bringing this all the way back around, I promise, to Gobsprak, because maybe he will be the orc who listens. So in Broken Realms Kragnos, if you guys didn't see it, Scragrot like scried the future and found out we need 3 artifacts to be able to destroy what is it? Not Vindicarum, Excelsius in Gur. Okay, they got one. The second one, they had it. They just had to bury it. Like it got buried when the temple collapsed, so they just had to dig it out. And then the third one, they were like, I don't want to go get that. I just want to go to the city and fight. He couldn't get Gordrak to do what he wanted, and so I would really like it if, when the new War Clan book drops, they make the connection of Scragrot and Gobsprak, because here is an orc that believes in portents and signs and those kinds of things and would be more willing to listen. And I think that would be a great way to bridge the gap between those two factions. I think much more so than Gordrak and Scragrot getting along. Like, even in just reading that in Broken Realms, I was like, I think they would just kill each other. But I could definitely see like a weird boy or a more mystical orc, like the Cruel Boys, they revere the shamans and that kind of stuff, giving Scragrot the time of day. So I would like to see that quite a bit. That guy, he just put in capital N in the chat. I don't know, my stream's not dead. Oh. Yep, there it goes. Okay, it's being weird. Let me close some stuff. Okay, sorry about that. It was the first Warhammer book I read after being into the franchise for a while. Somehow I didn't expect so much death. Yeah, it was. It's a brutal book. Like, it truly is. It was brutal, but I felt like reasonable. Like, and when you talk about like big, epic, massive battles, right? Stormcast, who like, they got struck down, but they were so powerful they just never stopped moving their axes, and they were totally fine, and things are dandy. It kind of sucks away some of the drama happening between two armies when they're trying to kill each other. But this one, I felt like a lot of folks died, and that would represent a massive part of the town's population, and every one of them was gruesome and terrible. And I was like, those deaths matter way more than the Stormcast phalanx, getting a chink in the armor. Love the fact that Gobsprak seems to be the guy to join all of the destruction factions. I hope so. I hope they bring that in. This book has a heavy feeling of dread all the way through it, and I thought it was going to be the wacky adventure stuff filled with silly goblins. Yeah, it's a dark book. I like it. I almost kind of wish I had saved it for Halloween. I'm not going to lie. That would have been really cool. Creepy as hell. There we go. We're back to a good connection. Weird. Internet's kind of for a second. But what else did I have? I'm trying to think of anything. I'm looking at my notes here. So I talked about the Bad Moon's Presence. I liked my favorite like character specifically. Hold on. My favorite character specifically was the elf. Like she acts as like the great second in command, respects the chain of command, but is also like very cool about helping Hendrik like be a better leader. And it's simple stuff like, in the morning they all wake up, she's out like scouting the town kind of a thing. Simple, straightforward. I know where she is, and it explains why she has so much information when she gets back. That's all I needed. I didn't need anything crazy. Some books go like, they just like dive through all different kinds of hoops to explain how a character knows something, and it's like, she woke up early. She has great like perception senses, and she's useful, and she's a helpful character, and that's just really cool. That's it. Nothing crazy. Let's see. It was the first book that felt kind of more like Warhammer Fantasy and brought back that sense of realism. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't read any fantasy books. Oh, that's not true. I read the Sundering series. I got into fantasy about 8 months before they sunset it. And so I was learning about my army, which was the High Elves from the Island of Bloodset. So, I mean, I read some of them, but, those books were not nearly as dark, I would say. I mean, the stuff with Morathi was not great in terms of darkness, morality-wise, but I felt like they were not apocalyptic, things are dying all over the place levels of dark. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've heard that a lot. If nothing else, it felt more like a fantasy battle book because it had a very contained setting. It wasn't wild and crazy fantasy. It was just very understandable. And I liked that quite a bit. Managed to actually get this book, meet and get this book signed by the author at Warhammer World. Although only had to purchase the book mainly to talk about his other works. That's super fair. I don't really know much about Andy Clark. What else has he written that you're a fan of? I'm curious. I would love to throw that in the topic discussion here. John Fisher, hey, thank you so much for joining us, brother. I hope you enjoy the channel and the videos and stuff. I think GW really struggled with scale at the start. AOS was fantasy 40k, and were followed by Sigmarines. Now they have made the world more quote-unquote real, and we know how the average people react to madness. I would say I generally agree with that. I mean, I definitely agree with the first part, that it starts with scale. Everything was so lofty and huge and epic that it was not, I don't want to use the word relatable because none of it is. It's fantasy. But you just need those little things, to relate to. I mean, for example, right? I have 2 half-brothers. Neither one of them has turned into a chaos spawn yet, despite my prayers every single night. But I understand that the motivation for Hendrik was, my brother died a horrific death, and I need that death to mean something, right? And I'm just kidding about my brothers. I don't want them to turn into a spawn. My brothers are awesome. I love them. But like that nugget of like his personal motivation is totally understandable. It's not fantastical. It's not outside the bounds of reality. It's not, it doesn't have to be a mountain that's pierces the heavens and it's actually a god beast just taking a nap and all these, I don't need all that stuff. I just needed a relatable motivation, and now I want to follow this character's adventures. And it turned out it was just a very comprehensible, meaning like it's not abstract, crazy fantasy stuff. It was a very comprehensible way of following a character through a story and like seeing from their perspective what's going on. I love the fact that up until the Lord Regent or whatever his name was gets poisoned, Like, we're just in the dark as the characters are, even though we've seen the cover. Like, I don't know what's going on. None of this is in the battle tome, but it sounds creepy as hell. So yeah, Doug is Village confirmed. I actually have that model without knowing a single thing about him. Has it ever explained how the other destruction factions react to the Bad Moon? Like, do orcs become empowered? I can't think of one. One of the only other references to the Bad Moon that I can think of, actually we're talking about it this week as a lore video, weirdly enough, is the Flesh Eater Court's book, because there's an Arborant Archregent that can predict the Bad Moon. So Skragrot's like, I want that freaking guy. And now, having read this, can you imagine Flesh Eater Court madness mixed with all the crap that the Bad Moon brings? That would be so cool. So cool. Andy Clark, make it happen. But no, Yummy Lumps, first of all, that's a brutal username to have to read every single time, because it's hilarious. No, I can't think of any time where they've mentioned the Bad Moon specifically buffing other stuff. I think we're probably more likely to see that with War Clans now, because I think the Cruel Boys are a wonderful halfway point between orcs and goblins, right? I mean, they are just this. Orcs are typically the Mork side of things, or I don't know, whatever one, Mork and Gork. One's mighty, one's cunning, right? One's sneaky and that kind of stuff. And they're a fantastic in the middle, because they can kind of operate as both. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw stuff going forward, but I can't think of a whole lot yet. Will, it was cool to see characters with such relatable motivations and goals. Absolutely. And that extends to everybody. Like, even, the Lord Regent, or whoever he was, who died at the banquet. I'm just like thinking about him, like, they operate in a theocracy. He prayed about it. I don't know what every other character was like, he's slow to act, and they're kind of like scalding him, and he's like, well, I mean, the dude prayed about it. He had a vision that it's about these zealots. By the way, that is my favorite part of the book, when they push all the zealot guys out of the city, and they all get attacked and like utterly obliterated within eyesight of the city. And they're like, well, glad that's over with. And you're like, no, that means there's something right there. What are you talking about? But they were like, the next day everything was fine. Why, within the character of the Lord Regent guy, things are perfect. And I liked that he had a logic of himself, and it is a theocracy. I don't know. That was cool. Like, he had his own motivations and his own worldview that he was locked into, and he was played for a fool because of it. Below him, there was the captain, who is seeing these things happen in the city and can't put them together. So we're watching her struggle to understand while trying to convey stuff to the Lord Regent above her, but she can't, because there's no connection to them, but they seem random. So like, everyone has a very well, I think, defined worldview, and their actions all make sense according to it. You know what I mean? And so I think that was a very good thing, because a lot of books, I do read a lot, not as much AOS stuff as I probably should, to be honest with you. But one of the things I see a lot is like characters making weird decisions where you're like, well, if you really thought about what that person's worldview was like, Lord Regent guy, he got here by fighting and praying about stuff. That's literally his jam. And so like, that's what he did. It makes perfect sense. So I don't know. I thought the internal logic of the characters was really quite good. So Andy Clark got a job on that. Let's see. I got about 20 minutes left here. I usually do like an hour stream for the book clubs. I'm going to open it up. Does anybody else have a favorite scene you want to talk about? For me, as I said before, it definitely was when the zealots got pushed out of the city, because that concept presents to me a very interesting take on Cities of Sigmar, where you have these, relatively safe, holds of order. Within them, people, like I said, it's a theocracy. They take the religion and their faith in a super weird direction. It happens to every religion. That's why we have cults. They take that in a weird direction, but it's like, well, okay, we have a theocracy. It's not quite like Sigmar personally chooses every single mayor of every single city. So there is some human government elements involved, obviously. But there doesn't seem to be much of like a detailed faith system. You know what I mean? In terms of like prayer, fasting, times of day that are super special, times of the year. There's not even a lot of holidays listed in Age of Sigmar, to be honest with you. But so when you have kind of like, I'm going to use the term aberrant, some kind of variation in a faith structure or beliefs, how do you deal with those things? How do you deal with a cult based on Sigmar that isn't technically doing anything wrong, but they don't like the establishment? I mean, that internal tension right there was really cool, because that's something that would absolutely happen. So I guess just kind of getting an insight into that struggle was really meaningful to me, because it's like, how do we address this? Because it's not like everyone's a happy Sigmar follower unless you're a cultist, and the cultists instantly revere Tzeentch or Khorne or whatever, and at least that's how a lot of the battle tomes make it sound. It's certainly how the Disciples of Tzeentch book makes it sound. But then you have other stuff where it's like, they just disagree. Like, they worship Sigmar, but they just want to do it differently. They want to do it on their own. They don't want to be in a city. Those kinds of things where it's not malevolence. It's just different. But as innocent as I made that sound by saying it's just different, the amount of problems it presents, like in this exact scenario, things were going wrong. Okay, so the Lord Regent guy blames the different kinds of people, the people who, have some kind of difference in opinion with the church, the rule, the establishment, pins it all on them, kicks them out of the city. Now the city has fewer people in it to defend it, and they wrongfully assume that they've solved the problem. Like, that interaction is so uniquely human. I mean, it happens every single day on the news. We pick a scapegoat, we blame all our problems on that, and then it takes care of itself by all these zealots walking out and getting freaking murdered. So my point is, I found that any inclusion of the cult was very meaningful to me specifically, because I do have questions about how day-to-day life operates in a city of Sigmar. So, I mean, between this, City of Secrets, and the Callison Toll books, I really feel like those books specifically do a wonderful job of showing us what it's actually like to be immortal. A mortal, not immortal, living in a city of Sigmar. I think it's wonderful. I'm going to go back to my chat here. Christian, I asked you about Andy Clark. I just read his Imperial Knight series, so I was mainly talking about that, and if he was planning to write more. I was also asking what his favorite books were and what he was looking forward to. That's awesome. I didn't realize he wrote 40K stuff. For some reason, I thought Andy Clark just did like short stories, but he does a lot of stuff. Okay. I'm going to open it up one last time for an offer. Does anybody have anything specific they'd like to talk about? But other than that, that's all the things that I had. We touched on all the moments. For me, I give it a really good review. I thought the pacing, I did have a moment where I was like, okay, something needs to happen. But in the moment I had that thought, is the banquet. and that's when like the crap hit the proverbial ether fan, if you will. So I don't know. I was like, okay, you know what? Pacing's back on point. And from there, it was just this pure roller coaster ride of like survival. So I liked it. As far as characters, there weren't necessarily like personal arcs for every single one of them. They were very interesting. I would absolutely read a book about them again. Whether it was a prequel with the brother included before he died. Yeah, that kind of stuff. I would love to explore the characters more. They seem very interesting. I like their interactions, how they talk to one another. Did I miss who your favorite character was? I really liked the Death Mage. I'm not gonna lie. He was basically there for snarky one-liners about how creepy he was, but I mean, so am I. Let's see. As far as other characters, I did actually legitimately like Hendrik, the leader of the Swords of Sigmar. I liked his motivation, that he wanted to see it through. I felt like Andy Clark did a good job of making his internal struggle known, but without like just heavy exposition. It wasn't like Hendrik sat and brewed and thought about his brother and how things should be better and all. I felt like more subtle than that. Yeah, that's probably what I would say. For me, I really enjoyed seeing the Mangler Squigs. I think they really captured the sheer chaos they would cause. Absolutely. Where it's just a tornado of violence. You know what I mean? Like there's so much, literal energy. Like when you get something that big that starts smashing into buildings and whipping around and that kind of stuff, like it just blows your mind to even consider how much force is behind all those movements. It's, yeah. James G, I'm new here. How do I get involved in the book club? Is this somewhere the current book is everyone's reading posted? So James, thank you. Welcome. Basically, I'm going to put out a video soon here where I announce the next book. And when I do that, I will also schedule the live show to go with it. This kind of live show as well. So I don't have, I'm still waiting to hear back. No, I guess I haven't scheduled it yet. I'm going to put a poll up for my patrons and YouTube members to kind of vote on the next book. Actually, I think the next one, isn't that Overlords of the Iron Dragon? I feel like that was one that kind of kept getting tied for Gloomspite. I'm sorry, I'm playing with this thing I shouldn't. So that's going to be probably the next one. But I will make formal announcements of it for you, and I'll give you the date on when we're going to read it and all that kind of stuff. So just hang tight. I think I will probably have that up probably next week or something like that. But thank you for joining us. That'd be super fun. Asriel, blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. Corn was pleased this day because Gloomspite had a lot of death. There was a moment I liked with the Death Mage where Aelin was having to all but carry him when she tells him not to tell her to leave him behind. His answer was something like, "Of course not." Yeah, exactly. But yeah, he's just like, yeah. I liked his zingers. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't like comedic relief in the purest sense, but when I think about what an actual death mage would be like, they probably just have a dark sense of humor, which is exactly what I am like. In real life, I have a rather dark sense of humor. Things that I refuse to share on this channel. But yeah, I could definitely see that. Early enjoyed Aelin's first time dealing with the effects of the moon when she started struggling the fear factor. Yeah, when you get a sense of, like in real time, someone perceiving the fear and the effects of the bad moon, but also having that like almost like metacognition to be like, this is not a real thought. Like, I get a little personal here. When I have like anxiety attacks, I do that where like my brain is all scrambled and focused, and then there's just this little voice in the back of me is like, none of that's real. Something's not right. Like, and so you can't figure out what it is because your faculties are all jacked up. But at the same time, there's just that little bit of like, we need to solve this problem. Like there's something going on, right? Intuition style. The idea that being under the light of the bad moon causes fungus to sprout from your skin is delightfully awful. There is some great body horror in this book. Absolutely. And that is, I'm glad they had that in there because I felt the same way when I read Neve Blacktalon First Mark. that there was a lot of body horror stuff, because the Nurgle villain was Nurgle champion was the villain of that book. And I kind of expected that, because like chaos stuff, it mutates your body and warps it and that kind of thing. But I'm glad this book included a bunch of it, simply because I don't want that to be like proprietary to chaos. Like, I don't want it to be like destruction books. They just fight a bunch and die. Chaos books is where things get weird and twisty and warpy. It's like, no, these guys do that too, and I love it. Even later, when he's somewhat resigned, he struggles to live. He was a good guy, but not the typical stoically sacrifice himself. Yeah, he was a cool character. James G, hope to catch you on the next one, buddy. The comparison of a Trog attacking and taking a few moments to realize he missed, and Skragrot's Trog guard being able to see a surprise attack and react in real time is my favorite thing. Yeah, they're just better. Skragrot's teaser video years ago was what really hooked me into AOS. I could see that. Yeah, I remember that, because they had that whole series of like shorts that was Malign Portents. And I remember seeing like this cartoon. I'm actually going to see if I can find it right now, because it just made my day. But yes, I agree with you. I felt like it was that entire thing turned into a book. Like that scene of like things just being creepy and off, and you hear his voice and like, the bad moon spoke to me once. And you're just like, oh God, this guy is terrifying. Yeah, this style of art. Boom. Oh wait, I didn't mean to do that. No, look it up. Hey everybody, we're on Bell Souls. Better than Spiky Bits. Okay, yeah, we'll throw that there. I love that rendition of him, because that's exactly how I imagine him. The Bad Moon spoke to me. Yes, I just repeated that. Let's see. I really loved the Gloomspite battle tome and novel, but wish it showed more in the minis. Maybe the odd mini suffering the effects on a base. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is when you get into more of that kind of like esoteric terror and that kind of stuff. Like, how do you represent that as a model? That gets difficult. I certainly think things like the Mangler Squig truly, like, I mentioned this when I covered, what is it? Battle for the 8 Points or whatever it is? Wrath of the Everchosen. Oh my God, my brain's just skipping today. I'm sorry, I'm zapped. When I covered Wrath of the Everchosen, I mentioned, like, we have the what is it? The Black Coach model. It's a gorgeous model. It's really cool. But the way that they describe them in motion in that book makes it like 10 times cooler. And I felt the same way about the Mangler Squig, where it's like, I look at the model, I'm like, yeah, this guy, he's big and crazy and cool. But then when you see scenes of them whipping around and like, because there's two chained together and one whips this way, it pulls the other, and it's just insanity. It just kind of gives it so much more life. But the problem is, like, that doesn't necessarily translate to every single model. Like, how do you, I mean, honestly, I don't like the Gloomspite Gets battle tome rules when it comes to the Bad Moon, of just like, it passes over a quarter of the board or something like that. I never liked it. I didn't feel like it projected the right feel. But then again, the minute I say that, I'm like, well, how do I do that? What is the Bad Moon like? And so I don't know. It's a hard one. Good to see another vid from you. Absolutely, buddy. I was disappointed we didn't get a fungus infected model when they released the army, and this book makes me wish even more that they would make one. A fungus infected model. So like a person being infected, like, because I mean, there's a lot of ways they could go. I mean, they could make some true body horror stuff, and it could be like, oh, this would be cool. Okay, what if they did? This is why I love these things, because like chatting with people gets brain juices flowing. If they had a unit that was like three maximum of 5 models, right? I mean, I want to keep it small, but it's like different sculpts of various body horror, like what the Gloomspite gets do to people. But they act as Scragrot's asylum on the go, people he takes with him. So like maybe in game, it's like he gets, +1 to something if he sacrifices one of them. They can't come back by any means, but they represent the body horror aspect and the mutations and the weird growths and all that kind of stuff. And him using that to his advantage, which is 100% in the Battle Tome lore, as well as him doing terrible body horror stuff to people in the book that we just read. I think that would be a really cool thing. That would probably be a good way to bring some of that to the table. My big thing is like even just like the basic grot seems scarier in this book than like a grot on the table. We're just like, 5 up, 5 up. I think that's about all that I had, certainly from my notes and stuff like that. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this up there as we can wrap up our discussion. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and give this, like I said, I don't like comparing it. That's why I love the Gobapalooza. Yeah, I was kind of thinking something similar to the Gobapalooza, actually, where it's like, because they do show a bit of that with the mirrored mutations and stuff like that, but as like a weird ancillary unit where you can have them kind of operate independently. I would like that a lot. As far as the next book, I believe, let me triple check. I believe it's going to be the Carriage and Overlords of the Iron Dragon, I believe is what it's called, or Iron Keep, something like that. But I'm excited to crack into it. And I will have a release date for the next discussion, as well as a lore video that kind of sums up all of Gloomspite into a hopefully rather epic narrative and talk about things that I liked about it. Again, thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I will catch you next time. Happy wargaming, my friends.